Okay, I will quickly check if I'm live here on YouTube as well. Just a second. We maybe wait for a bit for people to join in. It is pretty early for me, so bear with me if I'm improvising this a little bit or if I'm babbling away. So I think I'm all set up for this now, and you can always kind of ask questions in the comments live as we go, and I try to include them, or otherwise maybe in the end of my little presentation here about the grid block, we can go over a few questions, so you can just drop them in the comments on YouTube, and then we go from there. As I said, I wanted to go ahead and explain the grid block a little bit better, and I go into like just general CSS grid settings as well, because what we did with our AinoBlocks Grid block and same with our Flexbox block is just, I think because we come from like building with CSS and stuff, I was like, okay, I need kind of the same settings to build out our designs. So what you can find in our grid block and Flexbox block as well is kind of just what we have available with CSS Grid. Available to build just for the themes in general. So that's how it came along when we first started building the block, and as we kind of like build more designs out with our blocks, and we kind of like add whenever we need something. And it was never intended to go against anything that the core blocks are already solving. It was more like a more detailed approach to kind of really build, like every time we hit a wall, we're like, okay, we can't build that with core blocks. Okay, let's see how we can build it with our AinoBlocks. And that's kind of how we always go along. And maybe later on we can also like incorporate things that are now available in core and incorporate that into our patterns. And yeah, we kind of see that we kind of always go sync and sync with core blocks. So we're not building, like feeling we're building against something, but rather like complement something that isn't there yet. And that hasn't been that out, especially blog. The first version of, okay, we need to get this working, iterate and improve things along the way, and there are a lot of things to improve still. So, every time you see something like, okay, this is not working, or I can't do that, please just let me know. Every channel like Twitter, Instagram, we have a Slack community channel as well. I maybe link that later on in the video description if you're not joined that already. Everywhere you can find us, just drop us a line and say, okay, can you add that? Because we are like super open. We need your feedback, and we want your feedback to kind of like improve things along the way. And we also have a list of stuff we are improving. So, okay, I think enough background talk. So what I did at the moment is kind of, I'm jumping from the Figma file to the actual editor. So here I just created a test page, and I always open the list view. I think the list view at the moment, if you're building more complex pattern and layouts, is like super essential. So I just created an empty test page, and I used our header and like empty header and footer template here. So it just gives me the header and the footer on the page, and everything else is empty. And I dropped this part of the hero pattern in here that we've created for our newest like agency business theme, Solar One. So if I go here into the patterns directory and look for the hero pattern, you can see the hero pattern here, and I just dropped that in. And this obviously, now I closed the list view, opened the grid block. So what we do with our pattern, we always group them into a group block. This makes it easy for users to change the background of the entire thing. So this is always full width, and we always put on this group block, we put any outer patterns, like responsive spacing, like top, bottom. If we want to add something here, we always do it here. So if I want to add more padding on the top and the bottom, like to build multiple sections below each other, this is always where I put the padding. So if you want to delete anything, you can always find that here. And then here is our grid block. So I switched a little bit in the editor. The view is not like super optimal at the moment, so I switched the colors at the moment, and we also included new icons there, just so if you haven't seen them yet. This is the latest icon version for our blocks. So at the moment you see, once I click into the grid, I kind of see these grid lines here, and I kind of see, okay, these two grid item blocks that I included align, like are somewhere on these grid lines. And you don't have it, like they don't perfectly align at the moment, and I will fix that in an update. But if I also go like into the front end of my site, so here you see I have the header and the footer on my site, and just these little, the hero section. And if I go into the actual CSS, I can see my the next one, and I also see my grid cap. And I do the same in the editor here. So the only thing that is not visible at the moment, and it's not right, is the grid gap, and I will fix that in an update for the grid block. So what you have available in the grid is practically you can do spacing on the grid itself, but mostly we don't recommend doing that. I try to not do that. I always put the grid on the outer group block, but you can also add the spacing to the grid or to the grid item, and sometimes you need it in the grid item. I closed the spacing section now. I thought it was kind of annoying to be open always, so you might have to search in the settings for it. But let's go back to the Figma file and kind of see like how this ended up to be in the editor like that. So to kind of explain the background of the settings you find in the grid and grid item block, let's go and see like how we build these patterns in Figma. Manu builds them, and how we use the grid there. So the light red element is the grid, and in Figma you can kind of always show and hide that, or with Shift and G you can show and hide your grid. And you can already see, okay, I have this section, and here I already have the other pattern included, but we can ignore these 3-column little snippets for now. So I have one section that is like text content, so I have this little pre-title, my heading, a button, and a little introduction paragraph, and I have this image. So in the layout I see, okay, in the line 5 and line, so it's like this in this column, and my text element goes from the second grid column here to the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th. So I can kind of see where I need these grid columns to be, and if I see this kind of sections that I want to keep together, like a heading, button, and stuff like that, I always put everything into a grid item because it just gives me the settings that I kind of need to work with. So everything in the grid always goes into a grid item block. That's general rule. And this is just how we build our grid block. It's not a general thing. And maybe you find a grid block from someone else that works completely different. So I built this layout here, and it doesn't look pretty, but kind of explains the concept of grid if you're not familiar with it. So in our AinoBlocks Grid block, we always use a 12-column grid. We don't change the columns in mobile. Sometimes in CSS Grid you see that on mobile the grid columns reduces, but we keep the 12 columns because it's just easier for the settings to work that way. So this light green here is the outer margins, and in traditional layout grids these would be included in the grid, and this would be part of the grid, like margins, and in like here in Figma it is, but in CSS Grid these outer elements are not part of the grid. So you need to have external like margins on your elements, and we just have these external margins on the page. And we start and I go into inspect mode. So this first line of the grid is the #1 grid column line. So just for terminology, the light blue elements would be called the grid columns in CSS Grid. Then the blue sections would be a gap, and it can be that a grid doesn't have any gap. It's an extra CSS line, so the gap could be none, which you will see in a second in our settings as well. So this is just the spacing in between the white elements here. You could set that to none if you don't need any kind of spacing. But in general, just for layout building, it's like you almost always have a gap. And then I would recommend, or like from a design perspective, if you have a theme or a website, you should remain like for your outer layout elements, if you're like building with multiple patterns, you should kind of have the same gap throughout your elements on a page. There could be exceptions to that. Maybe you want to have like an image gallery or something that has a very narrow gap or even a wider gap, and but the general layout should have the same gap, in my opinion at least. So this is the gap, and then in CSS next to the columns we have something that is called the grid lines, and this is actually what you're working with in the settings and in CSS as well. So the grid lines, you find that here. So there you define it with responsive to set the settings. As we recommended that we use the preview to switch automatically. I will probably include that, but I'm like super keen on the preview tablet mobile desktop view at the moment because it's not adaptable. I can't like resize it. It's super narrow for tablets, and then I have this issue with my Flexbox that I'm solving, so ignore that. But I'm not too keen on this like super narrow view for tablets, and it's not adaptable. So yeah, it's kind of like we have to work around these things. And I think what they're working on at the moment for WordPress is that we have this preview window to be like zoomable like in and out. So that would be awesome to have a more flexible page layout. And maybe this preview tablet mode you will like will kind of be outdated. I'm not sure about that. Maybe we can like research and write about that in more detail. But the responsive view in the editor is something we are like really still working on with the blocks, especially Flexbox. Our Flexbox block has some issues there. So, but let's go back to the grid items. So the grid lines are that what we're actually applying here. So if I go back into Figma, I see, okay, the first one is, it's not the column, it's the line we have numbered. So that's why I have 13 numbers, even though it's a 12 column grid. And you see that here I do have 13 numbers, even though it's a 12 column grid. So that is somehow confusing. But if you look at this sketch, not a very nice looking sketch, it kind of starts to make sense. So you start to count from 1, then the second, like, and this could be 0. So this is also, the gap also is the line. So 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is what you need to be working with if you set these settings. So my first grid item here goes from, in the desktop, goes from the second grid line to the 8th grid line. So if it starts and here, and this is the 8th. So this is exactly how Manu created the design. And then we go into this item is only includes the image. So if you look at that, what it includes, so this is the paragraph, the heading, the flexbox element, and I grouped that again. I'm not 100% sure why I did that, but I'm pretty sure it has a reason. So here in the second grid, I only have the image, but if I look into the desktop, so it goes from grid line 8 to grid line 13. If I go back to my design, I can go up here. So from number 8, number 13. So it's exactly what we're building out in Figma and have this grid applied to. We see it translated into CSS Grid and into our positioning here. So from 8 to 13 in desktop. And then you can kind of look what it does on tablet. I'm not sure if this is like messed up, to be honest. Oh no, I did kind of made the image smaller. So on tablet it's like not full screen, and then on mobile the image is also a little bit smaller. And this one goes like full column 1 to 13, and 1 to 13 is the elements. So let's check that here on our front end. So this is like full width 1 to 13, and the image I did a little bit, like I put it a little bit smaller. So let's find it in the editor. So as you can see, it is a little bit smaller. It does we're still like working on extending that. The default is none, and then you have a small app, and you always find that on the outer, a medium, a large, and an extra large. And for the moment, I have trouble with the sound occasionally somehow. Okay, cool. So the sound is an issue. Let me try to fix that quickly. Sorry. Audio. I hope this maybe solves the problem. I hope. Thanks for mentioning that. Oh no, I had this issue before. I hope the audio is better. Maybe if I... Okay, cool. Thanks for letting me know. Oh no. Okay, I hope it's better now. Sorry. So this translates, so we wanted to simplify that and do just t-shirt, maybe that could be, but I think it's maybe my problem because I had this before, the sound being super crappy, and I'm not sure, it's like in StreamYard settings or something. Now I did echo cancellation and I hope it's better. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I think it's my fault. So we do just t-shirt sizing, the same we do with our font settings, just to make it simpler. But I'm working on the documentation for translating these things. The actual size is because it's document, and I will put this on the actual AinoBlocks documentation side. I will continue to work on that on the weekend because it's a little bit neglected, unfortunately. I'm so sorry. It's breaking up. Metallic sound. Is it better now, the sound? I hope it is. Should I try? Speaker, microphone. I hope it is better now. If not, let me know. I continue talking and then. So at the moment, it's just this super ugly Google Docs, but as you can see, so in desktop comes out to the small gap being 16 pixel, the medium pixels and 48, and we will like extend that to XS being 8 pixel and then maybe even a wider gap for some user cases, like a cool image gallery. The sound changes sometimes, also picking some. It's a long way from. Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Maybe it's the microphone positioning. I had this problem before with live stream. Maybe it is just live stream issue. If it's like super bad, let me know. Otherwise, I'm not sure what else I could do. I could just maybe use, if it's like continuing to be awful, let me know, and then I switch to maybe just the earpods. Okay, so these are the values for the grid gap, and in mobile we make them automatically smaller. So that's why we felt the t-shirt sizes are more appropriate than like having actual pixel or rem sizes in there. So same with the typography and the spacing. It always translates to a responsive. So these are our spacing values, and I will continue that. Here you find blocks IO docs, which is not working at the moment. I think it might be I hope it's not my internet connection being messy. I hope I'm still here, because now I have some issues as well. So I will just try to continue and hope the quality comes out okay. I hope this works. So where did I stop? Oh, with the gap. So yeah, you set the gap on the outer column. So this now is an L gap, and this would be on desktop. This would come up at 32 pixels. So just as a reference, what we are actually doing. And I know in the app, it's pretty perfect on desktop, and I have 13 kind of have in mind that we keep the 12-column grid just to make it easier, because you have the same numbers and you can kind of change them on desktop, tablet, mobile without having to change the numbers. That's why we went to keep the gap, the grid lines. Then you have in the grid block itself, you don't have a lot of options. You can give it a color and you can add spacing, but like if it's not needed, don't do that. Kind of leave everything to the group block background for color and for spacing if it's possible. And it's just also easier to kind of like, if you have multiple patterns, to have these grouped into, I will open a page later on, a page pattern later on with multiple groups, so you can kind of see why we build it that way. And then also these are sections, the groups, so you can kind of switch them around. Maybe let's quickly show. So if I would add another page, I could have that be the dark one, and it would automatically nicely like switch colors here, and it's easy if it's I close that. It's easy if it's a group. I can just change the color here if I wanted to. So that makes it super easy. To work. And then I could like switch the positioning and drag and drop it around. And there is a discussion going on for layouts that we can rename these sections. So I could name this hero and then featured elements and so on. So it would be a lot nicer for people instead of like group below each other. So yeah, back to the grid. So the grid itself, the settings are kind of like simple. It's mostly just to and then and by default, it's important that you don't forget the tablet and mobile settings, because it is all separate. So it nothing applies automatically. And then you have already kind of more advanced settings, except for alignment. And some of these settings I will kind of delete, because they are like from previous versions, like the gutter and overlapping. You don't really need to use them at all. So it's kind of from older, like first versions of the grid block and grid item block, that they are still in there. Margins is something that can be super helpful, and we did that responsibly as well compared to the sometimes you need a margin in the mobile and you don't need the margins to be on the tablet, especially if on mobile you stack things from top to bottom, and then on desktop you have it next to each other. So here you see I have mobile top on 7, on tablets on 8, and then desktop I set it to 0 to kind of have it reverted. So if I wouldn't put a 0 here in desktop, it would be left at 8. And these are also the same spacing values we have here, and you find them already in the documentation. So 8 is 24 pixels on desktop. So this can be super helpful for building. And so it's kind of helpful to use our pre-built patterns, so you don't have to kind of work with these. So you can kind of go from what we build and put your own content in, which is a lot easier than really building this from scratch. And then alignment is a big thing. Yeah, well, I hope it's okay for you to watch. Otherwise, I think I can have a recording of that session and upload it. Because I think I sometimes drop out. This is awful. I hope it's okay for you to watch. Okay, let's go back to alignment. So for the grid item here, I want it to be aligned in the center, like not on the top. And if I would put it to start, it would like start from the top, as you can see in the editor reflecting that. On the end, it would be from the bottom. So what I wanted to do, I wanted always to have it centered compared to the second grid item. So the image is, in most cases, has more height than the text. So what I want is the grid item to be centered compared to that. So that's why I have the item I'm dropping out in and out. I have no clue why. I hope it's okay for you to watch. So what I recommend is going quickly over this grid guide from CSS Tricks. You can just Google CSS Grid, and then this is the first article that comes up. Because in this one, it's really a cool explanation of all the details from CSS Grid. It's a shame because what you're showing us is great. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I see that my internet connection is like dropping in and out. It's awful. I see it in my ScreenYard setting as well. Oh no, so sorry. I did it like really bad. I will just do a general YouTube recording and put it up with the same content for you to watch, like on the, and maybe you do that. Yeah, recording would be great. Yeah, I will do that. That's awful. I'm so sorry. It's like the first live broadcast I do on YouTube. And now, like, I did this before and it kind of worked. I don't know what is going on. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I see that too. It's dropping in and out. Yeah, I will do a recording again because I kind of prepared the content and it's good like background information, I think. Yeah, cool. I do this later today and then upload it. It doesn't need to be like super perfect video, just to kind of have the context. So yeah, this year are not working anything. Okay, I'm going out, and then I can, in the recording, I can kind of like mention that anything you like to understand. So it's cool. It looks pretty complex, the CSS Grid article, but it makes kind of sense to go over it maybe just at once, because it's really explaining everything in detail, like justify self and like alignment, self-alignment from the grid items. So here is the one that we just did, start and center stretch. So I kind of, in the block setting, I kind of just took the same settings and it reflects CSS Grid, and we do the same thing. So this would start from the top, this from the bottom, this from the center. So this is the exact same things. You have start and center stretch. The stretch would be like stretching all the way from top to bottom, which makes sense if you have a background on the grid item and you want the background to go all the way from bottom to top, and then stretch would make sense. And the same, justify the item is the same thing. It do we have it? I think here. So yeah, you can read through it if you want. So it's again start and center and stretch, and this is just the horizontal line. So start would be a line from the left, end would be from the right side, center in the middle, and then stretch. So one is horizontal and one is vertical. And again, you have the same settings here for justify item. So justify item is horizontal and align center is vertical. Am I saying this right? I hope so. I think yes. Yes. So I kind of tried to explain, but it makes sense to go over the CSS tricks grid item and kind of see these. And I will add documentation for the AinoBlocks documentation as well to kind of show these, because it looks complicated if you just see it in the settings and you might not know what to do with it. And then once you've kind of looked into it, it kind of makes sense. So what I wanted to show you too is kind of like, okay, thing in a group like zero, and you wanted to have this reusable, you can always create a reusable block. And at the moment, so you just go to this tab here and add reusable block, and you can name it yourself. And then the cool thing is you can change anything in a pattern we created, build your reusable block, and then have it available for you to reuse. So if you have something simple like image and a text like we have here, and you kind of changed anything from the original patterns, you could my custom block. And it's kind of like weird that it's called a reusable block, because it's more like a synced or reusable pattern you're creating. But I think they're also talking about changing the name on that. So you can save that, and then the cool thing is you have it. I don't know what happened here. I need to update that. So now this is a reusable block, and if you go into customizing the reusable block, this will change too. So if you drop something into your page and you don't want it to be synced any longer with the original custom reusable block or sync pattern or whatever you want to name it, at the moment it's with the original my custom block, you can kind of ungroup it from the syncing and convert that to a regular block again. So this way you could take a pattern that we've created and take it and customize it, make it a reusable block for you to reuse on posts or your pages, and then either keep it synced, but I would recommend once drop the page, most likely you want to convert it to regular block and patterns again. Use custom and reuse them on your pages and posts. I actually wanted to go ahead and build like a 4-column grid with you from scratch. The recording of YouTube live sessions don't have the dropout. Oh, that's good to hear. So maybe we're good to go on the recording. I will definitely publish the recording, but I maybe do like a quicker, like 10 minutes or so YouTube video with the same content. It makes sense. I wanted to go ahead and create like a 4-column grid and make it responsive from scratch, but I'm kind of hesitate if I should do that now or if I should do a YouTube recording instead. I think probably I just do a recording of that, maybe even like a separate video, and it probably makes more sense. So you can kind of see me working in our blocks, in the grid block and grid item block. So this is more like the background information, and then I can show you how I would build a block from scratch, but just as a background. And I in general, but can work from what we are creating information to that. I'm not sure if you already know, we are at the moment building pattern library. So we've created 3-4 themes already now in blocks, and we have like different patterns with each of the themes. So now we are like going ahead and want to build a pattern library that you can use across themes. So like a general like starter kit for you. And these patterns will be super cool also if you say, okay, I just need a 4-column grid element and I don't want to mess like building it myself and having like the responsiveness and everything. I want you guys to like pre-build it and then I just drop my content into it. So these will be amazing for you to kind of work on that. I'm not sure if it's like super ready, but maybe just quickly show you how it will kind of start to look like. Yeah, definitely have connection issues here. Oh, I'm so sorry if it's like awful to watch. I know super rough sketches at the moment. We're just building from kind of the patterns we created for the different themes, but just as a background, this will be amazing for you to kind of see. So as you can see here, so we will have, and I maybe disable the grid on that. So we will have a whole bunch of these like starter kit patterns available. And then you can, so it will be theme, go ahead and drop content in these, and they will be a lot more general to use. So that is what we are working in the background now. And I think from probably end of next week or so, we will have like the first themes. You have the pattern to work with and kind of build on top of that if you want to extend kind of the background working because these grid and responsiveness and stuff, it's always complex. Like you see here, this is still a little bit of a more simple thing, but especially things like testimonials and stuff, like with where I have the card block and then I have like nested everything. It can be pretty complex, and it also takes me quite a while to build these patterns out. And yeah, so it's like, it's not you if you struggle with the blocks like building from scratch. It's really complex, especially with the responsiveness and things. Like sometimes you need margins on top if it's like one column below each other on mobile, and then you need to delete the margins and like all these kind of things. And also as a background information, we will continue to add settings to the group and the group item, the grid and the grid item settings and flexbox and so on. There's already a few things I have on my to-do list where like, okay, we need that. This is still like thing, just let us know. Cool. So I think, as I said, I will do a recording for like building just like a 4-column grid from scratch. And then I do that this afternoon. It's Friday morning here in New Zealand. So I still have the whole day to do that. And then I check the recording of this session. Maybe I hope it's better quality. I'm so sorry for that. I will like do testing to kind of improve these things. I'm not sure if it's like just that, like, because I thought it'd be cool to do this like if comments. I'm dropping out again. This is awful. Maybe I do a different time of the day next time. That would probably maybe help. Maybe I do evenings next time or so. But I see my quality is really low. Otherwise, I will just kind of like end the live stream now. I'm so sorry for bad quality. Okay, cool. I think it's really bad quality for you guys. And then now I see it's like dropping in and out. I'm so sorry. So let's like call it quits here and let's see how the recording is. And then just let me know also in like Twitter direct messages or anywhere if you have any like recommendations, and look out for more videos later in the day or for you guys tomorrow probably on this channel, on the AinoBlocks channel. Thanks so much everyone for bearing with bad quality even and still being here and watching. I hope it's useful. Let me know any feedbacks in the comments or so. I'm super open because I'm just like trying out different formats. Thank you so much. Yeah. And I will see if I can just kind of quickly create a few more videos and kind of a summary of what I showed you in a recording as well. Have a lovely rest of day, evening, or wherever you are, day, morning. For me, it's Friday morning, so I'm gonna do the recordings later on. Thank you so much. See you soon. Thanks. I hope it was useful. I will end the broadcast. Bye, everyone.